Well, hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and this is My Life as a Landlord. I am so pleased that you have joined me today for this last location-specific episode in this tranche, which is happening at the end of December 2025. In fact, this is the last episode of 2025. So thanks for joining me. This is kind of an interesting episode because the Pacific Islands, which is the location that we're doing in today's episode, is actually made up of American Samoa, Guam, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, known as the CNMI. Now, I had to do some research on this geography to actually understand this because I already did an episode on Guam as a location specific episode. And then I went, wait a minute, the Pacific Islands includes Guam. So American Samoa, let me tell you about the other ones. American Samoa is in the South Pacific, consisting of 5 volcanic islands and 2 coral atolls with a population of about 55,000 people. And then residents are US nationals. They can't vote. They're not US citizens, but they have other US rights. And Guam. So, like I said, I've already done one. That was episode 150, is about Guam specifically. So, but Guam has a huge U.S. military influence there. Population of Guam is about 170,000 people, and the people of Guam are U.S. citizens. And so, like, it's this episode is about the Pacific Islands, but I've already done Guam, so I'm going to do American Samoa and then the CNMI, which consists of 14 islands between Japan and the Philippines. All 3 of these territories are classified as unincorporated, meaning that all the provisions of the U.S. Constitution may not fully apply, and each location has local governments of varying degrees of self-governance. For example, American Samoa has a unique status that allows it to govern itself to a significant extent. Now, Guam and the CNMI have a more structured system with a bigger political influence. So, anyway, what I'm going to end up doing is the Pacific Islands is really 3 areas. One area I've already done. And so I'm going to end up doing American Samoa and CNMI for this location specific podcast. And if you've been listening to the show, I am going to create the same framework that I have in all of my location specific episodes. I answer 4 of the same questions. So what are the basics of this location? In fact, in this instance, it's going to be 2 locations, American Samoa and CNMI. What are the basics? What are the nuances? And then the third part is guidance on abandoned items. When a tenant abandons a unit, what do you do with the abandoned personal property? And then the fourth thing is, if you need help, where do you get started? Where can you go for additional information in those local areas? And then at the very end of the episode, I will review whatever we haven't talked about on the bingo card. I'll kind of hit my standardized list of the most common things I see and see what is there, see what's not there. And I remember in Guam, there was actually quite a bit that was not on the bingo card. So I'm not sure how much we're going to get to today in American Samoa and CNMI, but that's exactly why we do these shows, is to learn a little bit more about it. Now, I got to tell you, here's my disclaimer, that this episode is not all inclusive. If you've got rentals in American Samoa, CNMI, or in Guam, you've got to do your own research on the ground. Even if I get every single thing perfectly right on this episode, which is doubtful, but if I do, even 5 minutes after I'm done recording, it could change. And that's exactly what laws do. Things get updated. You've got to remain current on your own research in your local area. Okay. So this episode is not all inclusive. It's just designed to get you started in these areas. One shout out to our sponsor today, Aloha Capital Investments LLC. If you want to know what Mike and I are up to and want to learn more about how you can participate in real estate investing, check out alohajb.com. Okay, I'm going to start to share screen. So if you're watching on YouTube at My Life as a Landlord, that is going to be the easiest way, because you can see as I'm talking through all of the 9 hyperlinks that are in the show notes for both American Samoa, the Pacific Islands, and also CNMI. Now, again, if you want to know more about Guam, episode 150 is where you go. It is all about Guam. It's got its own thing. Okay, so I've got the first hyperlink up. This is called Commonwealth Law Revision Commission. And this it talks about the trust territory and the trust territory code. Now, the whole idea is that these areas have been set up under different agreements and different structures, which is why they're territories. And yeah, it's kind of interesting how this all works. So there's just a little bit of a history on the Northern Mariana Islands, the Marshall and Palau and Yap, and some of these other islands grouped together in the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands by the United Nations in 1947. And it talks a little bit about how it was established. And then there's copies of the code. There's nothing regarding real estate in this one. This was more for my edification, so I could understand a little bit more about where we're talking about. Some of this is a geography lesson, right? So there are some hyperlinks up top here, and you can potentially dig deeper if you want to. Yeah, I think so. This one's the CNMI one, and Board of Education, Finance, just seeing if they have anything for like Board of Parole, um, Department of Public Lands. Remember, these are places that are quite small, and so they tend to consolidate a lot of things under one roof, one department, one management group, and so that's why you're seeing all of this. So, Housing Corporation, Visitors Authority, DLNR, this Department of Lands and Natural Resources. Um, Commonwealth Development Authority. Yeah, okay, I'm going to keep going. So there's because we've got 9 hyperlinks and I don't find a whole lot in here. Now this one was ruralhealthinfo.org. This is talking about the Pacific Islands, about the jurisdictions regarding health. Now, admittedly, I just Google, and this is how I start all of these podcasts, is I will go, whatever location I'm doing, tenancy law, boom, and see what comes up. And typically what comes up is I've got everybody who's paid for SEO, right? Everybody for search engine optimization. They've paid to be at the top. I skip beyond that because I don't want the national registries. I want to know from boots on the ground. I want to know what's there. And typically, I try not to go to local law firms either, right? I'm trying to not do bias. I'm trying to go right to the legislation, right to the law, right to the nonprofits, the housing providers, things like that. And so that's what you see when I start grabbing these hyperlinks. So this one was U.S. affiliated Pacific Basin jurisdictions, again, regarding health. And so it's got this really interesting chart here that I thought was kind of interesting. And it does have not only American Samoa, CNMI, Guam, it also has some other ones as well. And then it has all these notes with hyperlinks. And again, they're talking about population, but they're also talking about relation to the US, the individuals, Congress, geography, and population. So if we're looking at, in fact, let me zoom in on this a little bit because it's so small. Okay, American Samoa. So relation to the US, it's a territory of the US, unincorporated and unorganized. Individuals are US nationals, but may become naturalized US citizens. Congress, non-voting delegate in the US House of non-voting delegate, right? Because they're US nationals. And then it talks about the geography of American Samoa. So 7 islands, as I mentioned, 5 volcanic, 2 coral atolls dispersed across 150 miles of water. Wow, that's actually a long ways away. 76 square miles of land. Wow, that's really small considering Maui is 10 times that. Wow. Okay. So, and then it talks about the distances to get to everything. And it says American Samoa is slightly larger than Washington, D.C., and the population is 57,000. It talks about the median age. And then CNMI, sorry, Self-Governing Commonwealth for the U.S., former Marianas Island District of the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands. Wow. Individuals are U.S. citizens, and that's the same as Guam. Congress says resident representative to the U.S., resident representative to the U.S. Okay. And that includes, like I said, 14 islands, including Saipan. Okay. I didn't realize that Saipan was in CNMI, including Saipan, Rota, Tinian, stretching across 430 miles of ocean. Wow. Those are pretty stretched out. 183 square miles of land. It's 2.5 times the size of Washington, D.C., 70,000 people. And just for interest's sake, Guam is indeed a territory of the U.S., unincorporated but organized, U.S. citizens. non-voting delegate in the U.S. House of Representatives, same as American Samoa. One island, 212 square miles. It's 3 times the size of Washington, D.C. Population is 154,000. 3,700 miles away of Honolulu. I did not realize it was that far away. That's a long way. I have to look. I wonder what time zone they're in. Hmm. And then some of these get really, really small. Like check out this one, Federated States of Micronesia, 607 small islands grouped into 4 states. And then it talks about the 4 states. And then the Palau, 6 island groups of Palau, total of just 19,000 people, 196 square miles of land. Okay. Anyway, I thought that was interesting because I didn't know anything about what these islands were all about. So that's kind of cool. So let's go to the third hyperlink. Okay. So what I went through, this is an interesting one. Now, admittedly, this has nothing to do with real estate. This has nothing to do with business. This was just interesting, and it's all about sex ed for social change. So this website is talking about state profiles and how they do their sexual education there. Nothing to do with landlording at all. This was just, hey, this is something weird that I thought was cool, so I'm throwing this in. So U.S. territories, Guam, and other Pacific Islands, and so it goes through this about how they do sex ed in the Pacific Islands. So anyway, you can go through this about the different data, how reporting, teaching how to correctly use a condom. Okay. And then Guam's sex education snapshot. Anyway, has nothing to do with anything. It's hyperlinks in the show notes if you want to see more. But I thought it was interesting because it gives you some preference, some perspective of what's going on. So, okay, let's get to the heart of this though. American Samoa. This is the American Samoa Bar Association. I'm on the fourth hyperlink, and it's asbar.org, asbar.org, and this is American Samoa Bar Association, and it's talking about the licensing body and official bar for those who practice law in American Samoa. They serve for judiciary. Now they do have some. Hang on a second. They do have bar documents, minutes, agenda, bar. Okay, sorry, I did find the legal resources. Here it is. So legal resources is the one on the end. Regulations. So you want to go to regulations, and then there's going to be the administrative code. So let's go into that. And then each one of these, there's a list of like 50, and then each one of these is a PDF. So you could go and see. Now remember, and this has all just been updated since very recently. So it says October 21st, 2025, and we're recording this less than a month after that. So these have all been relatively recently updated. So this one, if we were going to look at real estate, we would look at, let's say, property. This is Title 37. Oh, gosh, it's microprint. Okay, so this one is relocation assistance, crop damage claims. Okay, it's 12 pages, and I suspect, yeah, let's see what they say here. So it's defining agency, business, displaced person, mortgage, replacement housing for homeowners. Now, remember, in the Pacific, there's a lot of catastrophes, right? People lose their properties, they lose their homes. And so there's a lot. And I noticed that about Guam as well. There was a lot about hurricane damage. And I suspect this is going to be something similar about helping that. Yeah, this is all replacement housing for tenants and certain others. So this one actually is talking about the government. It says, in addition to the amounts otherwise authorized by this chapter, the governor shall make a payment to or for any displaced person displaced from any dwelling not eligible to receive a payment under the section above, which was this the displaced one? Yeah, replacement housing for homeowners. Yeah. Just reading through some of this. So it just says that the government will help pay for housing to make sure that you're housed somewhere for up to 4 years. They'll pay for your housing. Yeah, this is relocation assistant payment system contract for services, assured availability of replacement housing. Um, okay, land acquisition. This is regarding purchasing land. So we haven't gotten into any of the landlording stuff, right? Any of the dwelling stuff, which, and we may not. There may just be self-governing in Samoa, American Samoa, and that's what I found in Guam too. I think Guam had um, a bit of a governing aspect regarding the landlording part because of the US military there, right? Remember, there's 170,000 people on Guam. These are much smaller, both American Samoa and CNMI. And so I'm not sure what we're going to find, but that's exactly why I do these location specific podcasts is to learn how this all works, right? So this is all talking about buying property and oh my goodness. What is this? Oh, it's a compensation scheme. Okay. And they have different locations. Okay. Well, that's what is this one? This one is relocation policy. Okay. Nope. That's not really. Let's see what the other one says. So this one, let's go back to property and then let's go. Oops. Okay. How did we do this? Oh, here it is. American Samoa Administrative Rules and Regulations. Let's go there. Okay, now this one could be a little bit confusing. Okay, I'm going to wait. I'm going to go back to the other one. This is the administrative code. Let's just look and see if there's any more about housing, because I'm not sure there is. That was property, environmental, health, economic protection and development. There might be something about landlording in there. Giant African snail. I doubt it. Ecosystem protection and development, not economic. Okay, let's go to the next one. Aeronautics, communication, health and economic welfare services. Oh, let's look in there. Okay, healthcare planning, health facilities, medical center. This looks like all about healthcare. Okay. Public works, public plan, executive, government employees. Let's go to building plans. Let's see what it says here. Budget manual programming, territorial planning commission rules. Okay, again, that's not landlording. Um, let's just see all titles. Let's see what it says on all titles here. And remember, we're still in the administrative code part. I'm just seeing what's in here. And it says all titles. So this is everybody. This is everything. And it's almost 1,000 pages long. Oh my goodness. But let's just see if they have anything. I'm just looking at the titles here because Commerce Code, business licenses, I don't see anything regarding housing, providing housing. This is immigration. I bet immigration is a big deal there too. Yeah, and then it goes into that. So that's not it. Okay, I'm going to go back. So if we go to that was administrative code. So nothing in administrative code was under landlord or real estate, but there was some stuff about property. We did see that. Okay, administrative rules and regulation. We pull this one up. That's the hyperlink. Again, we're under the official website of the Secretary of American Samoa. And this, goodness, it's quite technical in their description because it doesn't actually, like this one just says amended and then it has a bunch of numbers, which I don't even have any reference on what those are. So if they are housing stuff, it's not obvious, right? So just gonna I don't know if it would be that easy. Yeah, so in everything in here, aircraft landing charges was not included in this. So I mean, literally, this is like the whole life of American Samoa. So Title 11, Chapter 4. I have no idea what that is. I just clicked on it. What is this? Filing American Samoa overtime compensation and compensatory time policy. Okay, well, that's definitely not landlording stuff. Okay, let's just keep going. So rules and regulation, you can take a look. There are some other resources here that you could take a look, but I'm not seeing code annotated by title and chapter. Let's just see code annotated by title and chapter. And this looks like all court stuff. This is like election, government, employees, civil defense, revenue. Oh, okay. Let's see. Revenue. Revenue for public works, health and okay. It looks like this is just a very concise method. Yeah, not seeing it. Yeah, so this is the same one as that we were in before. Okay, we'll just keep going. So this one, also American Samoa. This is I put this hyperlink on there as well. And so this was Leasing and Licensing of Customary Land Act of 1965. Now I found this one digging through all of these hyperlinks, and I didn't go through it yet because I try to go through it for the first time so that you can see me struggle and you can see me think. Um, so this one is granting lease. It might just be lease on land, but let's see. It's 17 pages long, so there should be a bit in here. Leasing and licensing. Okay. Form of application, disposal of a job. Okay. Payment of rent or other consideration. So it does look like this is just land. So I don't think this is going to work. Okay, schedule of fees. Yeah, this is all for leasing land. Okay, so and then the next one is Property Law Act of 1952. Now these are quite old. It looks like they have been updated recently only because they look like they've been paginated, so it's not like super old and you know how it looks like when somebody takes it in and they look like it's been photocopied 10 times. This doesn't look like that. And so thinking that it's probably been updated at some point. General rules affecting property, freehold in the future, estate chattel, equitable waste. Okay, now this one is quite long. This is 92 pages in this one. Covenants implied on conveyance, surveys, mortgages, form of mortgages, leases and tenancies. Here we go. Tenancy from year to year not to be implied. Covenant. Okay, so this is good. So let's go to this one. So part 8. Um, Run with the reversion. Okay, so let's go to part 8. Let's go all the way down to part 8, which is bizarre. It doesn't actually tell you. There's like no table of contents or anything. So, okay, this is talking about acquisition of land again, covenants with the land. Part 6. Okay, we're almost there. Part 7 is mortgages, and then part 8 will be lease and leasing. And hmm, all right, I'm almost to, I think I'm almost to. Here we go. Leases and tenancies, part 8. Okay, tenancy from year to year not to be implied. No tenancy from year to year is created or implied by payment of rent. If there is a tenancy, it is taken in the absence of proof to the contrary to be a tenancy determinal at will of either party of 1 month's notice in writing. So that's fine. So it just basically says it's not a year to year unless you make it a year to year. If there's nothing else, then it's just month to month straight up. Okay. Um, in a lease of land, there's implied covenants for the leasee. Okay, so I'm not going to go through this because that we're not leasing land. We're talking about leasing homes, leasing dwellings, right? And then let's see, rent reserved by a lease. I don't think we have actually found what we're looking for yet. I think this is still leasing land. And oh, this is neat. Light and air, access or use of light and air. Except herein, no tenement shall become servient to any other in respect to access of light and air. Hmm. Okay. All right. I think property law, it's basically land. It's not actually the providing housing, right? So, okay, let's keep going. This doesn't look like this is making sense. So we've got leasing land. This is both American Samoa, and then this one is again, the American Samoa again, and American Samoa. I think this is promulgated in accordance with the American Procedures Act. So this is another wrinkle, American rules and regulations, but this is different than the administrative rules that we saw before. Yeah, different. Okay, let's look further. Increase. This is health permits, small purchases, disabled persons. But some of these are just super confusing because it doesn't have any more description. This looks very familiar to the last one that we were in. Maybe not exactly the same. Okay, no. And then this is the administrative code. Okay. All right, we're going to go to the last one. Now, this one was about CNMI. So it doesn't appear that there's anything regarding dwellings, but there's got to be. In fact, this is, let me just write in here, what governs housing in the US when the local government has no regulation? See what comes up. So it's saying state and federal laws. Okay, well, what if there's no state or federal laws? So I added the word state in here. Okay, so then this is just AI. I just threw this into AI and says when local governments have no housing regulations, state laws and market forces primarily govern housing development and the availability in the US. Market forces. Okay. Well, let's go to the CNMI one because I'm not even sure how far we're going to get in this. This is actually it just seems like it is such a small location where American Samoa and then CNMI, and it's so spread out that it's sort of like either there's minimal rentals or what may very well be happening is housing may come with employment. And so there really isn't a governing document outside of Guam, which even Guam's was kind of loosey-goosey, right? And so that may be the case here because I'm not finding like tenancy laws for these locations. So it's a little different here. Okay, so this, I've got a PDF open for CNMI, and it says to establish the Northern Marianas Islands Landlord and Tenant Rental Act of 2017. So this is relatively new, right? It's 8 years old, but okay. So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but just the first sentence is actually pretty telling. One of the biggest problems for CNMI residents and landlords is the lack of a concrete landlord tenant code, something that is considered fundamental in all US 50 states. Isn't that timely that we just found that? Because that's exactly what we just discovered. So legislature finds that the laws pertaining to CNMI landlords and tenants must be reviewed to provide legal rights for renters and landlords. So as things stand, neither landlords nor tenants have very many rights, so much so that CNMI has been described in some real estate as the wild, wild west, and this can't be allowed to persist. So this act that looks like it's a bill, now there's no indication this actually got signed into law. Let me scroll all the way down, but there is some guidance here. So it looks like we did find it at least for CNMI. It is signed, so I'm assuming that it did get enacted here. Um, so the legislation addresses multiple areas, including how much of a security deposit can be required when a landlord can evict a tenant, renter's ability to recover money if unlawfully evicted, who's responsible for what repairs, etc. And I'm just gonna go through the highlights here because this is 20 pages long. And it sounds like they, in 2017, CNMI recognized that they didn't have a governing document, and so they tried to create one. And so this seems like this is it, which is kind of cool. American Samoa doesn't appear to have this, but again, American Samoa is even smaller than CNMI. So that's interesting. Okay. Okay, so there's a couple bingo card items on here that are great. For instance, under this act, a CNMI landlord cannot demand a security deposit greater than 1 month's rent. Moreover, if a deposit is used for property damage when a tenant moves out, the landlord must provide an itemized list. Otherwise, the landlord must return the security deposit. If the landlord fails to comply with this requirement, the landlord may be subject to the tenant's recovery of twice the amount of wrongfully withholding. Significantly, this act also requires landlords to comply with all building and housing codes. There it is. So safe and habitable, fit and habitable condition, maintain all utilities in working order, and provide for garbage collection and removal. So we're talking basic sanitation here, right? With regards to repairs and damages, so it explains how you're going to do this. This provision is something that CNMI sorely needs. People live in substandard living conditions because it's all they can afford and pay rent to landlords who take no responsibility for the property. If no one regulates landlord responsibility, people can be victimized. So hopefully landlords on CNMI are listening to this podcast. I doubt it, but they could be. It's kind of interesting though. But on the other hand, tenants will now be required to maintain a safe, clean premises and use utilities reasonably and follow landlord regulations in accordance with the law. So both sides of the rental equation, landlords and tenant, will have clear and reasonable guidelines to follow, tools to use in the event of compliance with the law lacking. Okay, we're just going to scoot down here. Dwelling unit. So this is the first time in all of my hyperlinks that we have seen this. In fact, I'm going to bump this one up to the top because this one, I'm not seeing it anymore. So this is the CNMI Landlord Act of that. Yeah, and I'm going to leave that sex ed article in there if you're interested in that. I'm going to leave that in there. Demographic information. Yeah, there's just some of this is, some of this is just, it has nothing to do with real estate. It's just a matter of doing. Okay, back over to the document here. Talking about a lease agreement, whether written or oral. Notice. Terms and conditions of the rental agreement, landlord may include, and then prohibited provisions. Like this is just the basics on how you're so like I love when they put in this is like unconscionable. It says prohibited provisions in rental contracts. A rental agreement shall not provide that the tenant agrees to waive or forego the rights or remedies in this act, and a provision in the rental agreement is prohibited under this act shall be unenforceable. And you also can't do things like in the lease the tenant agrees to forfeit the security deposit. Like you can't, right? Like come on, like you've got to play by the rules here. You can't do this. So um landlord shall not demand any security deposit greater than 1 month's periodic rent. And this goes through, they have 14 days to give back the security deposit afterwards. And otherwise, the landlord might pay double. And then the landlord shall basically be engaged. A tenant also has to, so it's on both sides, right? It's not just the landlords being deadbeat landlords, it's also tenants that have to maintain the unit, but you have to have something to maintain. So there's a dual engagement here that they are trying to establish. Right to access, tenants shall not unreasonably withhold consent for the landlord to enter, to make repairs, non-compliance by the landlord in general. Yeah. So this has got failure to deliver possessions. Okay. If the landlord fails to deliver possession of the dwelling unit to the tenant, rent abates until the possession is delivered, and the tenant may terminate the rental contract upon at least 5 days written notice. And you got to give back, the landlord's got to give back the security deposit, or they demand that they get the unit. And this happens typically when there's some kind of repairs or something out of their control is happening and they can't actually deliver the unit. I've had this happen myself, and we have to make other options. Like you just can't leave people without a place to live. And so you have to figure this out. Um, Self-help for minor defects and repairs. Oh, this is kind of interesting. If the landlord fails to comply with the rental agreement or section of this act, the reasonable cost of compliance is less than $300 or an equal amount to half month rent, whichever is greater. The tenant may cover the damages and then notify the landlord. And yeah, basically they've got to cover it and then take it out of the rent, or the landlord's got to pay. Wrongful failure to provide water, hot water, or essential services. So this seems like very basic stuff to you and me potentially, but this is pretty important. Fire or casualty damage, landlord remedies. So this is landlord remedies. Basically, it's talking about evictions. Um, Landlords have to behave, but so do the tenants. And so if there's non-compliance by the tenant with the rental agreement or non-compliance affecting health and safety, the landlord may deliver a written notice to the tenant specifying the acts and omissions constituting the breach, and the rental agreement will terminate upon a date not less than 30 days after the receipt, and the breach is not remedied within 14 days, the rental agreement shall terminate. Yeah. So what is this one? If the breach is remedied, oh, yeah, okay. So then it says 6 months. Wow. If the rent is unpaid when due and the tenant fails to pay the rent within 14 days written notice, then the landlord may terminate the rental agreement. So yeah, and then you got failure to maintain, remedies for absence, non-use, and abandonment. Okay, so we're getting some of these bingo card actions, right? Like there wasn't a whole lot until this document. So if the rental agreement requires the tenant to give notice to the landlord of anticipated extended absence in excess of 7 days pursuant to this act. The tenant willfully fails to do so, the landlord may recover actual damages from the tenant. During any absence of the tenant in excess of 7 days, the landlord may enter the dwelling at times reasonably necessary. And if the tenant abandons the dwelling unit, the landlord shall make reasonable efforts to rent it at a fair rental. Basically, they're just going to take it over. This is interesting. This is going to take it over. If the landlord rents a dwelling unit for a term beginning at the expiration of the rental agreement, it terminates as of the date of the new tenancy. If the landlord fails to use reasonable efforts to rent the dwelling unit at fair rental, or if the landlord accepts the abandonment as a surrender, the rental agreement is deemed to be terminated by the landlord as if the date of the landlord notices the abandonment. If the tenancy is month to month or week to week, the term of the rental agreement for this purpose is deemed to be a month or a week, as the case may be. Okay, almost to the end of this. Holdover. So holdover, that term implies that something ends abruptly and the tenant has overstayed, meaning that whatever is going on, if there's a fixed lease and it ends abruptly, they've overstayed. So if the tenant remains in possession with the landlord's consent after expiration of the term of the rental agreement or its termination, the landlord may bring an action for possession of the premises. If the tenant's holdover is willful and not in good faith, the landlord may also recover an amount of not more than 2 months' rent and reasonable attorney's fees. Now, it does not tell you at all how to do this, right? There's no place that I can see that will actually walk you through how to do this. So I'll search that here in a second, but I just wanted to keep going on this. Refusal of lawful access. If a tenant refuses access to the landlord, there's a little bit more about repealing effective date. So yeah, this is signed. Okay, so this is signed. Okay, so if I'm going to say, let's say, how do I file for eviction in CNMI? Done. Whoops. There we go. And oh, then guess what it says? Hawaii eviction process step-by-step guideline jumps up. Hawaii. In fact, going through just getting hyperlinks for this episode, Hawaii jumped up a lot because it doesn't make sense, right? Like the computer is confused. Um, so let's do Mariana Islands like that, not Mariana, Florida. It's popped up again, Hawaii. So here it says videos of how I file for eviction in the Mariana Islands. Okay, perfect. So there is a bunch of YouTube videos. Fantastic. Um, in fact, this one, filing and responding to an action. Okay, I'm not going to endorse anybody's YouTube. So if you are in this situation and you're watching this video, or you're listening to this podcast, then the answer is, it looks like there's a great resource for Mariana Islands. And but Hawaii is all over this search. That's pretty funny. Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. Okay, well, I'm not going to go through my bingo card because I think we can agree that there is a lot in here that it's just it's not there. Like they've got the basic, super basic framework of everybody agree, landlords behave, uh, tenants behave and pay rent, everybody be engaged, and that's kind of it. Like there's really it doesn't go any deeper than that. And I just wonder how people are taking this because now they're 8 years into this. I'm recording this in 2025. And so they're 8 years into this document. I wonder, boots on the ground, if this actually works, right? I wonder if they actually have buy-in from the people who are doing it, or if they just, wild, wild west it. I don't know. It's very interesting. If anybody has any input from CNMI or American Samoa, please reach out to me because I do want to get perspective on this because there's not a whole lot here. So if this is you or you've got family in either of those locations, please reach out to me because I would like to talk to you. Okay, let me go through this. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are that you are very likely new to real estate, or maybe you're just curious about what tenancy laws in the Pacific Islands, including American Samoa, Guam, and CNMI are. If that's the case, then you can jump onto social media. And normally I would tell you to go to a meetup, but I suspect there may not be lots of landlord meetups in these locations, especially since they're small islands and they're quite strung out in large distances. But you can still do that virtually. And so jump on Facebook, jump on LinkedIn. There are landlord forums all over. Explain what your concern is or what's going on. But again, if there isn't a whole lot of regulation there, maybe you're not on social media. Maybe you're not listening to My Life as a Landlord because you don't need to have any guidance on this. You just do it. You just go and do all the things you're not supposed to do, like turn utilities off and lock people out. Maybe that's okay there. I don't know. That's not okay where we are, but yeah. Anyway, definitely learn if you do have rentals in these locations, make sure you know the rules because I can't seem to find them myself. But I'm so happy that you have joined me for today's show all about the Pacific Islands. I feel like this is just very hollow. It's sort of like a pie with a little bit of filling, but not really a whole lot of filling. So, but we did set it up. There are some interesting things. But if you know more, if you have a better perspective about the Pacific Islands in general, please reach out to me. Just one final note, don't forget to subscribe for more expert advice and real stories from across the rental property world. I'm recording this episode today from Maui, Hawaii, and I always ask that. Why? Because real estate takes you places. Where do you want real estate to take you? Join me next week for episode 202, where I interview a guest about what to do when a landlord does nothing. Michael Daniel joins me next week about talking all about barking dog nightmares. I'll see you there.